Hey folks, so a couple announcements before we get started with today's lesson. Test results will be available Wednesday, Thursday of this week. On that same note, we're changing the due dates around just a little bit. This should work out in everyone's favor. There shouldn't be any reason that won't work out in your favor, but please remember that our due dates, if you are part of the Monday, Wednesday class, then you need to have everything in by Tuesday at midnight. If you're part of that Tuesday, Thursday class, everything is due at Wednesday at midnight. If you're not sure which class you're part of, please check Google Classroom. Google Classroom will say very clearly which class you are a part of. Okay. Now, we need to talk about a little geometry vocabulary. The first couple of things we need to talk about is line segments, and rays. A line is a straight one-dimensional object of infinite length. Infinite means it goes in each direction forever. It doesn't stop, continuing in opposite directions. Okay. Line segment, part of a line with two endpoints. Endpoints means it does not go on forever. It stops. You can see that right here. The arrows imply it goes on forever. The dot implies it stops. Okay. And last one is ray. It's a mix between line and line segment. It's a straight one-dimensional object with one endpoint. So you see the one endpoint here and continues indefinitely in one direction. So we notice that the arrow here implies it goes infinitely in one direction, but it starts or stops in the other direction. Okay. Now, naming these rays and lines. Let's see if we can get this going. Cool. Let's start off with a line. A line, if I'm going to make an example of a line right here, arrowheads right there, and I'll put a couple of points on this line, A and a point B, but we have the arrowheads, so we know it goes on forever. This line can be represented by writing an A and a B, the 2 points on it, and then over these A's, B's, I'm going to put a little line with some arrowheads. This tells me I'm talking about this AB. It's like a name for this line, okay? Now we see this ray EF, We can call this ray EF. We know it's a ray because it starts or stops at one point and goes on infinitely in the other. I can do the same thing where I just draw a little ray, a line with an arrow over it. That tells me I'm talking about the ray. Now, what if I wanted to talk about line segment EF? Line segment, meaning I want to talk about just this portion of it. And we don't want to talk about where it's infinite. We don't want to talk about down here. We only want to talk about this part. Well, you just put a line over it, no arrowheads. And then we know we're only talking about this small portion right here. Now, we're about to talk about angles, but to give a little hint on that, we see that we have an angle here. This angle has to be represented by three letters, okay? We have D, E, F here. Now, we are going to write D, E, F, D, E, F. Now, we notice the lines and line segments and rays, they're all represented by two letters. Angles are represented by three. And to show it's an angle, you have two options. You can put this little angle sign here. Notice it is not a less than sign. It's not a less than sign. It goes to the bottom and then it's flat at the bottom. It's just a little different, okay? And this right here represents this angle in between D, E, F. We can also show this, meaning the exact same thing, D, E, F, with a little tiny hat on E. These both mean the same thing, just different notations. Okay. So, an angle is a figure that contains two rays and have a single or common endpoint. So we see our two rays here, and they have a shared or common endpoint that is called the vertex. Think of the vertex as the back of the crocodile's mouth, okay? The back of the crocodile's mouth. Now, a circle is a set of all points on a plane that are equal distance away from a given point, which is called the center. So we have the center right here. Oops, we have the center right here, and every piece of the circle is the exact same distance away from that center. So this is, let's say, 10 feet. This is also 10 feet. This is 10 feet. This is 10 feet. They're all equal distance away from that center. Okay, parallel lines. I'm sure we remember parallel lines. They are lines that have that never intersect. So they run side by side with each other, but they never intersect. Okay. And conversely, or the opposite, we have perpendicular lines, which intersect at one point, which is a 90-degree angle. A 90-degree angle. Okay. These lines are considered perpendicular. When you think of perpendicular, think of, let's say, a wall and the floor. The wall and the floor are perpendicular. And angles, a little bit more about angles. There are several ways to name this angle. We had talked about this a little bit. Use the vertex and a point from each side. Notice that the vertex, the back of the crocodile's mouth right here, this R, now this should be in the center. This should be in the center of your three letters, okay? And you can either do SRT or TRS. We had also talked about the option of showing this. I'll write a little SRT with a little hat on R. This also means angle as well. And another way we can show this is just one letter. You can just use one letter for this situation because it's very clear that angle R is this right here. You can just use one letter. Or possibly we can use just the number. If there's a number found in between, we can absolutely use that number. Please remember this 1 in this situation is just a name. It's a name. It doesn't mean 1 degree. It's just a name. Okay. Okay. And next thing we need to talk about, we talked about a little bit of vocabulary now. Now we can talk about the coordinate plane. The coordinate plane. Now, the coordinate plane is made up of 4 quadrants. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this goes counterclockwise, the way they count these. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. They're split up by a y-axis. The y-axis is the vertical, and the x-axis. The x-axis is the horizontal. The x and y-axis meet at this point, which is 0, 0, and that's called the origin. Okay. This 0, 0 is a point. This point is represented by an x and a y. The number on the x-axis and the number on the y-axis. Now, every point you can find in this coordinate plane, every one can be represented by an x and a y. Every one of these points can be represented by an x and a y. Every point you see in quadrant 1 is going to have a positive x and a positive y. Every point you see in quadrant 2 is going to have a negative x and a positive y. Every point you have in quadrant 3 will have a negative x and a negative y. And every point in quadrant 4 will have a positive x, got myself confused for a moment, and a negative y. Okay. Now, let's clear this out. Graphing points. So we have here a couple of coordinates, right? And we are simply asked to figure out which one of these letters marks the point that is at that coordinate. Looking at number 1, we see 5, 8. Well, we know this 5 represents the x value and the 8 the y value. So looking at number 5 on the x value, on the x-axis, then we go up to 8 on the y, and it is letter D. Looking at the next one, 8, 5, it looks like we've switched them around. Now let's figure out, is that important? Does that change the answer? Now we have x is 8 and y is 5. Well, sure enough, that's a completely different point than the D we had found last time. Just an I here. At this point, pause the video and try to practice a couple more of these on your own. Okay. Now we have the opposite. We're asked to figure out what coordinate is coordinate Q. What represents coordinate Q? So we go to the x value, which is 5 for Q, and the y value, which is 2. Now it says O. Let's find our O. Our O, the X value, we always do X before Y, is 6. And the Y value is 4. Okay. Give you a moment to pause the video and practice these on your own. Okay. That'll be it, folks. Please remember, every week we're submitting a picture of our homework. We're doing our Delta Math assignment. Delta Math, meaning that you have it created an account already, and every week you're going into Delta Math and you're completing the assignment there. And we're also taking our quizzes. Okay. Appreciate your hard work. Keep it up, and always email me with any questions.